So welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. We're going to get started in a minute or so, and while we wait, just to get familiar with the Zoom platform, you should be able to see a chat or a question box at the bottom, and usually you should be able to pop in any questions you have there. And of course, today's webinar is being recorded, and we'll send all the attendees a link to the recording over the next couple of days. The session should last about 30 minutes, and unless we have a lot of fun and it just keeps going on, which is fine too. And so feel free to post any questions, as I said, throughout the presentation and in the chat box. So let's give ourselves maybe another 30 seconds, and then we'll get started, okay? All right, so let's get going now, everybody. First, a quick round of introductions. My name is G. Satish. I am the CEO and co-founder at Connext. And I'm joined by two very distinguished guests here. Both of them are practitioners in the industry. They spend a lot of time, I like to say, on all sides of the table in the enterprise world. And they're uniquely qualified to provide a lot of perspective here. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. First, Dave.
Yeah, thanks, Satish. Dave Jackson. I'm a senior ITS program manager at Jacobs Engineering. I've been in transit for 25 plus years. Just a few things. Started developing CAD AVL systems or computer-aided dispatch. Did a lot of consulting with all kinds of transit technology with Booz Allen, CH2M Hill, and then ran the company Transtrack for the last 5 years before I joined Jacobs. So lots of technology and having fun deploying it in this new era.
Thank you, Dave. Johnny?
Yeah, thanks, Satish. And my name is Johnny Bofilios. Look forward to this conversation today. Right now, I'm working as a sales capture manager with Accenture in what we call our Industry X practice, which is, research, design, engineering, all encompasses all aspects of operations and maintenance and reliability in technology. Been in doing this since it's been a while. I won't say how many years. So, I started my career in the enterprise asset management space, with CMMS, EAM, and then got into reliability, analytics, and decision making. So I'm looking forward to contributing some thoughts here for you, Satish and team. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much, Johnny. And so let's get started now. So a quick view of the agenda. These are sort of the broad areas for discussion today. Our goal really is to explore what we saw happen this year and what we expect to see happen as we enter 2024. And, it would be interesting for you gentlemen also to talk a little bit about what you thought may happen in 23 and what actually did and so on. So that should be interesting. And one other area that I'm particularly interested in is sustainability. Something that we're seeing an increasing emphasis on with a lot of our customers, and we'll cover that further in the session too. So that said, let's just set the ground here, right? So the three primary axes for enterprise software, this hasn't changed in decades: people, process, and technology. And in the interest of just setting ground here, as I said, so first, on the people front, globally, there remains a shortage of qualified people across industries. We've all heard of the driver shortage in transportation, for example. Less talked about, but equally true, is the technician shortage. And related to process, if you run a maintenance organization, you're essentially running a services business within your manufacturing or transportation or energy business. So the question then is, how do you capture and transmit the knowledge that is accumulated by your employees and get it ready for the next bunch of employees? And I like to call this institutional IP, right? And all that IP is lost every time your team composition changes. So that's another aspect of this. And again, standardizing business processes helps in capturing this IP. And the last bit certainly is technology. And as we see it, at least from our perspective, the focus is shifting more towards user adoption than simply deploying software. And this has been a big part of the focus since we started, at least at Connext. But would love to hear your thoughts, Dave and Johnny, in general about this.
Yeah, you look at technology in the public sector, it's been slow to come, and it's just part of the nature of our contracting cycles and everything else. But I'm starting to see more acceleration finally in transit moving core systems into innovative cloud-based platforms, and not just moving legacy to cloud, but now actually getting into some cloud native platforms, which is allowing a lot of more highly innovative tools to start coming into our market. As you were talking, Satish, you look at the knowledge management or the IP, leaving, starting to see some tools that are, having some AI where the average Joe technician or the average Joe person in a back office can, ask the tool questions for, hey, I need to figure, I can't remember how I go adjust this widget. So what are those, here's the procedure for it, here's a user's manual, here's the reference material being tossed at them, to help them succeed. So we're starting to see some of that. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of that, both with AI built in as well as some of the augmented reality tools as well.
Yeah. Johnny, any thoughts there? Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think Dave touched on it, you touched on it, and a lot of the folks probably listening on this webinar there's a lot of issues with workforce constraints, lack of resources, and then you have things that are happening out there. You got supply chain issues, you've got external factors, and for me, the technology allows us to make faster, better decisions, right? So we can do what you want to do. We have to do so much work, but we have to. How can we do it better and faster? Technology is what's the key here, right? So digitizing. So I know transportation seems like it's taken a while to mature, but they also have, especially large transportation organizations, they have a lot of infrastructure. How do you digitize all that, right? How do you get that stuff in a place where you can make decisions? Yeah. And with technology today, things have changed and improved, and we'll talk some more about some of those things. But, I think, we all have to change. We're going to adapt it, whether we want to or not. And I think now's the time. So.
I mean, and just to add to that, a recent conversation I had with one of our customers, they were actually saying that the life of that asset spans perhaps 2 to 3 generations of their crew. And we know what we're talking about, rail cars and so on and so forth. So, I mean, the goal is the more you digitize, the easier it is to standardize, and the easier it becomes then to capture information and transmit it across the organization. So
I want to add one more thing, and I know we'll jump to another question. But the one thing I want to say is it's all about change too, right? If you can make it easier, if I don't have to click too many buttons and I can walk and things are collected and I can minimize, that also creates user adoption and allows me to do my job, minimizing the amount of information I got to put in. So that's another key about technology, right? And like I said, maybe we'll cover it somewhere else, but I wanted to highlight that as well.
No, it's true. And actually, when it comes to the people, I think that also becomes a critical part, right? I mean, this is how we run our personal lives, how we buy things and how we sell things and so on and so forth, how we rent. So yes, I agree. So that sort of leads us to what we all enjoy talking about, which is digitization, digital transformation, and so on. So I guess the basic question is, what kind of progress have you seen in these areas in 23 within the industries you work in? And actually, a related question then is, what are the biggest impacts that you've observed? In other words, actual results, do those tally with the expected results and the promise?
I mean, from my perspective, there's been a number of aspects where, updates of the tools in the back office and or automating automating, getting all the data out of these systems and making information out of them that's usable. I've seen a number of successes in that part of the business where, you're starting to get business leaders having timely information at their fingertips rather than having to wait 2-3 weeks for useful information to find out if the changes that you're making are making a positive or a negative impact in the business. So I do see a fair amount of that happening, and I think we're going to see more as we start getting some of like natural language processing built into the back office of these tools, where where not only where it can help somebody be an expert per se versus just the average Joe, but also on things that are customer facing too. Basically helping to make our systems easier to use. I've seen some of the things in augmented reality with wayfinding tools for both, just the normal person going down the street as well as those that have, physical and cognitive disabilities as well. So I think there's a lot of things that, are creeping into the environment, and I think that's going to just continue to grow.
I think the biggest trend to me is the AI, right? I mean, from a digitization, you have enterprise ERP systems or enterprise resource planning systems, you have enterprise asset management systems, you have geospatial systems, right? But how do you bring all that? And, there's a lot of integration that's done and bringing it together, but how can you leverage that data? And I think that, to me, the biggest trend is in the biggest impact that especially in transportation, which is if it's transit, reduce improve on-time performance, or mean distance between failures, or whatever it is. You have all this data. How do you make sense of it, and how do you organize it? So, if I had to say my top digitization trend would be, and what's going to have the biggest impact is going to be AI. I don't know if you agree with that, Satish, or not. And mobility AI, right? Not just AI on a computer. You got to have it on a mobile device to help you do your job.
Mm-hmm.
I think that really makes sense, and actually our learning really, and when we started out with Connect, but even independent of Connect, right? If you look at how social and apps and other things actually evolved, it all started with B2C, right? With the consumer side of the business, it actually took roots there and then migrated towards businesses and B2B and so on. We're seeing the same thing here. So folks can use AI to write their thesis, to answer questions. More importantly, though, the questions really we have to ask are, hey, the last 5 times my own organization encountered this issue, how did we tackle it? Or how did my, the branch that is halfway across the country tackle the same issue? And it goes back to the same question of, can we make it easy for the consumer, right? User adoption and so on. And one related aspect to this, we talked about transportation, we talked about adoption of technology, right? One of the interesting things that we're seeing is that a lot of the industries we work in, right? Transportation is one, but we also do work in the utility industry, energy, oil and gas. In the past, it always used to be a heavy focus on reliability, right? And that in the past simply meant that, we're not bleeding edge innovation adopters. We really want to wait. And I think that dividing line is fading now. They're still heavily focused on reliability, but they still see this technology and innovation as helping them get there a bit faster, right? Because end of the day, it is still being delivered by individuals, by the folks that are actually delivering work on the field. So, and again, there is a little bit more discussion further on about AI, and I do want to cover this a bit more there. So here's the big question, right? What is the business impact of all of this, right? And to set the ground, my view has always been there are 2 primary reasons businesses buy software. One is ROI and the other is compliance. It's either making money or avoiding penalties. These are 2 big reasons. And we can all agree that digitization and automation efforts yield results in efficiencies, compliance, and safety. We know that intuitively, we're seeing examples of that. But then what are the stumbling blocks, if any, that you see in adoption? Is it just inertia, or are there other priorities that come up? Perhaps is it just security concerns? What are your thoughts there?
Let me start with a couple of things I see. In transportation, many of our clients are facing a huge funding shortfall right now.
Mhm.
And we've got agencies that are seeing, $750 million budget deficits in the next year or the year after. And as baby boomers continue into retirement, we're also facing staffing shortages across the entire business, as you mentioned. So tools that are going to help automate these processes and or make average staff as capable as an experienced staff that they're losing are going to be beneficial. The funding shortfall, things we can do to help agencies be more effective and more efficient. But also on the people side, it's kind of a two-edged sword. You mentioned the knowledge management, the people walking out the door with all the experience. But on the other hand, I've recently experienced some positive sides of that as well, where some of these new, very savvy and smart kids that are coming in and young people coming in are questioning the status quo. And yeah, we've done it that way for years, but is there a better way? So they're open to the story of, hey, let's look at how we can improve and do this better. So there's the bad part and the good part driving where we go in the business, but I think both have opportunities.
Johnny, your thoughts?
Sure. Yeah. So user adoption has always been in asset management. It's been hard. It's because you'll hear this. I'm turning a rent or I'm fixing an asset. I don't have time to key in information, right? And we've advanced. We've come a long way since that, but it's still a big issue because, especially in a resource constrained environment, because we're fighting fires and I don't have enough time to adopt technology, right? I think I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it kind of goes back to my original thing: is how can we make it easy for the end user to do it, right? So, and I think if it, you see it now. I mean, you'll see, that people do track inspections or they go out and do, surveys or whatever they do, right? You don't want to write it on a piece of paper and go and key it in, right? So a lot of that is, that's the things that are changing, right? But I believe, from I guess you could say, the impact. I mean, it's the business impact. I think that the biggest thing I've seen that helps with when you go this route of digitization and mobility is you reduce human error,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's a big thing, right? Then, for example, I'll give you an example. Computer vision. Everybody knows computer vision. Everyone sees, we have it on our phones. We can detect what kind of picture it is. And people use computer vision to identify defects. But if you put an AI component on top of it and it finds it for you, it gives you a much better. It reduces that human error and it gives you it allows. So then when you talk about user adoption, you talk about business value and all that. Now you start, they get more excited. I don't know, just some of my thoughts.
So, so a couple of things I can certainly add there. This aspect of user adoption, and those of us that have been doing enterprise software for long know this, that enterprise software is sold in the boardrooms, but and 3 years later, somebody out on the field gets to use the product that comes out of that decision. Most cases, I've rarely met end users who've been happy with software that they've been given, and it's not because of feature functionality. Let me be clear. I mean, that there is some outstanding work already done over the decades. The problem is really they don't want to become technologists. I mean, there is an inherent fear to actually sitting on a green screen and remembering which key to press where and what order to do it in. We still see this, by the way, when we go to retail outlets and they're saying, how do I process a return? This, and this. And somebody has to come and occasionally guide a new employee there. And this is a problem, especially if you have a skill shortage, you have limited talent, you have limited time. You want to give them the tools that actually make their life easier. If you have a 10-person crew, and if you can actually accomplish a 20% efficiency gain, you just increased your crew size without actually having to add bodies there, without having to transfer knowledge. I mean, this is a big part of what we're doing. I think the second aspect.
One thing to note there, if you could come up in maybe one of your versions of your solution, where you could barcode where you could put a chip in someone's head and transfer the thoughts, you got it. I'm just kidding.
So we're getting close. So here's something else, right? Here's two interesting things that we've actually seen. Broadly, I think the mistake, at least in the world we live in, which is cloud and mobile and so on, I think one of the big questions businesses start asking is, hey, how can I do all these things on the mobile, the things I've been doing at my kiosk or at my laptop, which is fine, but that's the wrong question to ask, because when is the last time you took a laptop out there to take a photograph, to annotate something and add it to a field? It's a different world. There is a lot more that can be accomplished. But interestingly, right? For instance, a few years ago, one of the mobile operating systems, there's only two in the world. So one of them announced that there is LiDAR capabilities now available on the phone. For the first time, we actually saw a feature that really has not all that much of a great interest for the consumer, but in business, it's a big deal. If I can take a photograph and if I can go literally a couple of layers further below and then annotate that, it instantly adds value right there on the field. So this is a big part of it. The second aspect, right? Speech to text. We've taken it for granted today, right? When we send out emails, I mean, I do it all the time, text messages, we use speech to text. Interestingly, when we use that feature, and it is multilingual these days, when we use that feature for the customers, they are actually capturing more comments, more information, because they are not now constrained by having to write and struggle through, whatever language or grammar or other limitations. And if your hands are basically, greasy right now, how much interest do you have in actually keying something in? We're actually capturing more information because of the technology. And this is interesting. We're not simply making things more efficient. We're actually capturing more data. This is truly enriching information from the field. So, we're seeing, this is an interesting world. I think we're already seeing, and it should get more interesting as we go forward. So one thing I do want to talk about, right? I've already talked about ROI and compliance, right? Make money or save fines, save me from penalties. We're now seeing a new factor of sustainability. And there has been a shift in consumer preference because the customers of our clients actually are looking for sustainable practices, which in turn can drive companies to adopt more practices that have a smaller footprint. For example, I want to use lesser paper. I want to reduce windshield time. So the question is, do these technologies we talk about have any impact on achieving sustainability goals?
I think so. Many of the tools we're looking at are helping us do more with less. Whether it's vehicles on the street, whether it's manpower, or planning and managing our operations to be the most effective. I think there's just lots of opportunities. Here at Jacobs, we have a Plan Beyond initiative, and that's, we are always looking at how do we look at not just what the customer's objectives are now, but, where should we be looking 10, 20 years down the road? So how do we help design tools that are going to make them more effective, help their assets last longer, help them plan to maintain those assets better? I think there's in sustainability a lot of tools looking at asset life cycles, and it's not just it's a 20-year vehicle, but what are all the subsystems on that vehicle that we need to plan for the life cycles on? And it's not just I'm going to do a midlife overhaul, but I probably have systems that every 3 to 5 years I need to look at how we maintain. So tools that can help manage those systems and manage that whole asset life cycle, I think, are going to become more and more important.
I was just thinking here, one of the things that COVID has done for us is change the paper, right? Reduce the amount of paper that we use by no more menus. You have the QR code, even though it annoys me, I have to use it, right? So same thing goes into mobility, right? Reduces the amount of information and paper that you need. But outside of that, I was just thinking, like, from a transportation is maybe say rolling stock or fleet, is how do you, reducing the cost per mile or reducing the vehicle, from putting too much mileage on it or whatever. But say with mobility now and with digitization and technology, I can dispatch the closest tech versus, you know, the one that's 30 miles away.
Yep.
And, you know, and then there's one 1 mile away, right? So so from a sustainability standpoint, I'm, you know, reducing fuel, which has a direct impact back to carbon emissions, right? Unless it's a electric vehicle, but there's not a lot of those yet. And then the other thing, and I think Dave touched on a little bit, is there's a direct correlation when you're maintaining your assets at optimal performance. They consume less energy. You look at motors and pumps and things, and engines, and right. So if you can somehow, especially in fleet, if you know from a telematics standpoint how it's running, and you know that information, you can take action before things get worse. Again, if you do that, it's reducing the energy fuel, and you know maybe some other type of you know ancillary scope of emissions.
Yeah, and I'm going to just add on to that. I mean, you look at some of the ITX PT type initiatives on bus and same on rail, where we're putting edge computers on, and instead of putting a CAD AVL system on and an APC system and a camera system, you're really putting one processor, one set of communications, one GPS, having everything plug into that with the peripherals and just host the applications on those devices. I mean, it saves not only all the effort to make all those devices and maintain them, but it also saves all that energy as well, having just one CPU running on the vehicle rather than, you know, 5 or 6.
Yeah, I actually think these are great points, and they actually lead towards something else, right? I started off saying that, you know, there is efficiency and then there is compliance. And the nice thing, at least about sustainability and the things we've talked about here, are they add to both of those factors. They do make things more efficient. You know, if you're buying lesser paper, you're printing lesser paper. I mean, our last count, our customers save something like about 56,000 sheets of paper a month. This is just based on the number of transactions that we are going through and what they would otherwise have done. And it actually goes beyond the obvious, right? If you can make updates and instructions available directly on the field, you know, the OEM has or the manufacturer has proposed an additional checklist item when you go for maintenance. And rather than bring everybody back to the office and train them or give them printed manuals, if this can be made available on the field, and literally as they fire up, they're able to see that on their mobile device, then you've essentially saved time, but it also increased compliance. You've reduced windshield time, which goes towards safety. So overall, I think this is one area that has a lot going for it, above and beyond the obvious benefits, and certainly it's a lot more than optics. I mean, that much I can certainly see. So again, as we sort of went towards the end, and we have the one other area we will touch on, which is our AI. But as we look at this, what emerging technologies can we talk about as game changers in the near future? We've talked about AI, and we'll have a couple of more minutes on that. But other than that, what else do you see from the perspective of people, process, and technology?
And one of the people aspects, you know, job insecurity of the people that are controlling a lot of the data, you know, that often stifles automation in a lot of applications. I can't tell you, talking to customers, how many times I walked into somebody who's got a 20-tab spreadsheet that they build from data they pull every week or every month. And they've got 20 or 30 different pivot tables, and basically it's all siloed into one person. I was talking to one gentleman that was managing some rail cars that are being deployed, and you know, he's like, well, I'm the only one that really uses this data. But he's got all the data there that's identifying, you know, what are the trends for items failing? How often are they failing? And it's not being fully captured and used in the EIM system. So it's just sitting on his desk. And you just sit and look at it and say, come on, if I could get that into something that's in the cloud, it's usable, build the tools so that you could extend it to the people that could actually use the data in the field. You know, you could sit there and start building a tool of, you know, I've got a system that won't go. What are the top 10 reasons that vehicle won't move? Well, it's a door sensor that's wrong, or it's, some little $5 part. But, unless you've got tons of experience that you know exactly which spot to tap on to get it to move, you're waiting for somebody to help you diagnose the problem. So I think if we could stifle some of the people part of that, or not stifle, but unstifle, and get people to say, you know what, let's pull that into something that make it more usable, make it more available to staff out there. The other thing, you look at the automated vehicle space, and automated, there's lots of pilots out there, but not a lot of production going. And a lot of that we've got, we need to codify what the limits of liability and indemnification with those technologies. I mean, those are the sexiest AI technologies that are out there today. But, with the safety impact to them as well, until we get through those hurdles, I don't think we're going to see, huge deployments, moving very fast.
Johnny, your thoughts?
Sure. I mean, the key, I guess, is going to be AI used in unique ways. But I think to me, from a technology standpoint, it's decision-making tools that help us, whether it's an AI tool or whether it's a software, like, that they can help me identify risk in my organization, right? Because it's from a standpoint of transportation, risk is, we try to mitigate as much risk as possible, right? And whether it's safety risk, environmental risk, reliability, whatever that risk is. And so I see it every day. Like, for example, I'm working on a solution right now where, people have to do certain inspections, whether it's inspect a bus or whether it's inspect a track, and how do we know that those inspections are being done and we're compliant and we're not going to go back and have, some type of violation? So to me, there's technologies now, we're using these kind of beacons where it knows when I entered the track, and then when I, and when I exited the track, and it says, okay, I'm in compliance, right? Again, it goes back to my change aspect, but that person doesn't have to do anything, right? But I'm also using that technology to do other things, like knowing that, hey, we're there, capture my time. Maybe, these sensors also have some vibration sensors. They can sense vibration, all kinds. So ITOT, right, is going to get much better. It's getting cheaper, right? And so we can get more of it out there. Having, the AI and then having the mobility, right? And the mobility is the key, right? So just being able to capture that information in the field, so I don't have to go back and do it, and it's done right then and there. And, I think you look at like capital projects, right? There's, we work on this thing called connected worker. We've talked about this, Satish, where when I'm doing my capital, everybody thinks of maintenance and reliability. Nobody thinks about, hey, when I'm building we're using when we're building a building, the hours we're putting, the materials we're using, all that, capture in real time. That's another trend that I see that's going to be big, that connected project worker.
So interestingly, right, I mean, it all still goes back to of people, process, and technology. I guess there's a reason that people is right on top, right? Adoption, it goes back to that. One of kind of the downstream effects we're seeing of this, it's an unexpected benefit, so to speak, especially in industries like, the utility industry, where literally these are life and death decisions, they make when they're, handling high voltage equipment, for example, right? And if they're not familiar with it, for the newer employees, as long as that information is made available to them right there on the field, they don't have to hesitate about asking a more experienced colleague or a supervisor, saying, hey, I don't know how this works. And they should ask that. But this helps at least in overcoming this. If you can provide in-context guides and videos, and in fact, if you can get your master technician to record those videos and say, hey, when you see this, don't touch this, call me. that's fine. But at least, there's no shame in saying that I don't know and I'm following the instructions. I'm calling somebody to fix this. So I think it still boils down to the people. And I agree. I think it needs to be easy to consume, which kind of leads us to the most interesting. And, Johnny, you've talked a couple of times about AI being the game changer. Any kind of, as we sort of move towards the end, any concluding thoughts on this? on the AI aspect of what we're dealing with?
On AI, I think the back office is going to be a real game changer over the next few years. It's not the sexiest deployments of technology, but the impact there, whether you're like you said, helping the average Joe be an expert, helping you be more effective, but also helping you just standardize the way you do business so that you're doing business consistently. And that not only helps you as a business, but your customer, they know what to expect. The vendors and suppliers that supply you, they know what to expect. So you're not having a fluid engagement because everybody does something a little bit different because that's the human nature and the different biases you have that are natural. So I think a lot of that's going to help us tremendously. I think also you're going to see some of the augmented reality applications, whether it's training tools that are helping you visualize what you're supposed to be doing and how you're going to do that, whatever you're maintaining or doing. Or like I think I mentioned, on the wayfinding tools so that you can hold your phone up and the phone saying, oh, you're looking at Joe's Diner and what you're looking for is just down the street from that,
Yep.
So I think there a lot of those tools are going to have some awesome impact in helping not only us in general as suppliers and consultants develop tools for our clients, but just society in general.
That makes sense. Johnny, your thoughts?
Sure. To me, what's next, and you have cloud, AI, mobile, all this technology, it's the framework. You have to have a framework set correctly, because the reason you're using these, you're doing this is to automate and make better decisions or faster decision making, right? Whether it's from I need to type up a quick email and send a memo, or whether it's I'm predicting some maintenance failure, or I'm looking at risk, right? If you bring it all together, right, but you divine it, because at the end of the day, AI is not going to solve all the world's problems. It just gets us to a decision, and we still got, like you said earlier, you still got to act on it, right?
Yep.
And you still got to make a human judgment that, okay, is this the right thing or not? Because it's not going to be perfect. But if I could get me there faster, like if I can just type a couple things and, or say something and it completes the whole thought process for me and gets it out fast, those are the types of things that I think is next. And we're going to see. And it's not, a lot of it is driven by our constraints. Like the transportation industry is labor, it's constrained with its labor force. And you have to do, more with less, and this is what's next, pretty much.
So the one thing I do want to add our own perspective, as connects in this, right? So one of the key components of our philosophy has to be to not jump into technology because we're fascinated by it. This is something we've resisted long and hard. We worked hard to avoid jumping too early into AI, but we did announce our own AI initiative. And the point is not about our initiative alone, but the key was, we announced after we worked with our customers to develop use cases that actually made sense to their end users, to their business. And we found some early adopters, who actually signed up, who are ready to do this. To me, with all of this technology, the use cases are the hard part. The technology itself, not so much. There is enough available out there. And as I think we were talking earlier, the cost of the technology is dropping by the day. So the question is really, what are the use cases that these technologies can make the most impact on? And I think, for instance, we've talked about predictive maintenance for decades now within asset maintenance. And I think there is a real case to be made there. So as we kind of went towards, the end of this presentation, I want to kind of take a moment to summarize what we've talked about so far. I think clearly we've used the word game changer a few times. AI is one of them. And for us, at least, we truly believe the best use cases are still evolving, and we're still seeing more examples. And clearly, I think the technologies that work for the largest and the most innovative bleeding adapters are there, but they also need to work for the average organization. And when I say average, it's not a pejorative statement. These are organizations that just want to run their business efficiently. So when that jump happens from innovators to regular organizations, I think that's when technologies are mainstream. And from that point of view, I think digitization has made the jump, and AI, I think, is helping us get there, and probably getting there faster. So any concluding thoughts from you, Dave and Johnny? And we have a few questions we can address right after.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I think, going back to the beginning, is people, process, and technology. And one of the things, you look at the cybersecurity environment we're in transportation today, where not only are our clients targets, but we as vendors and consultants are also targets as well. And the technology is often the easiest part. And you said it with you guys jumping into AI. It's the business case that needs to drive it, not the technology driving it. The technology should enable it, but we've got to all get to the right business case. But coming back to people, you can't forget about people. One of my prior companies I worked with did the phishing test, and the first time we did a phishing test, 35% of the staff hit the button. And without that proper training, that proper reinforcement program, I mean, we got it down to about 2% touching the button. But it really comes down to technology is often the easiest part. It's the enabler. Then you've got process and technology. So whatever we do, AI, augmented reality, or any new technology, we've really got to remember to focus on all three of those aspects.
Right. Johnny, your thoughts?
Yeah. So, I mean, we keep talking. It's all about empowering our people, right? To use the technology to make better, smarter, faster decisions, right? It's also about the time to value. we can say, it's all about the money too, right? It's about the revenue. If we improve on-time performance, we get, we get more happier customers. We get happier customers. They keep coming and paying for the service, right? For the and it's, to me. So those, when I look at this, I think about the how do I make it, the people, their job easier, right? Our job is to make everyone's job, make them heroes, make them, we're the guides and the heroes. We got to give them and empower them. If I'm working on an asset, and you said earlier, and I can pull up all this information about that asset and things that have been done in the past, and what and maybe who can I ask that's worked on it before. And that's a lot. That saves a lot of time. And then I guess the final one would be sustainability. I think sustainability plays a key. Everybody talks about it when environmental safety, sustainability, safety, and governance, and all that stuff. It's key. You want to use it. It makes good sense, and I think as we progress, especially with now that we're getting more electric vehicles, electric transportation type stock, mobility and technology is going to play a big key there, and you're going to have the technology to make those things, to know how to work on them. So that's another part of sustainability, right? Maybe not the mobile device, but it's the asset,
Yep.
And the asset has to be.
Great points there. The last sort of my parting thought on this before we move to questions is this. Almost 4 years ago, we said, hey, if your crew is out there executing work, and you have a backend system that is saying that, hey, go and repair this asset, go and inspect the other asset. We truly believe we're seeing examples of that now, where we are actually saying the backend system shouldn't actually tell you that your asset should call for maintenance. Your asset should basically tell you, hey, this is, my temperature is out, and or my the pressure is above the tolerance level. I need you to come and take a look. Or, hey, I see that you're, less than a mile away from where I'm located, so come by and check me out because I'm due for an inspection in 3 days. And I think we're moving in that direction, pattern recognition and so on. I mean, I think there is a lot going on that front. So we have a few questions that have come in. We probably have time for about 2 or 3 of these. So the first one, what do you see as the main challenges in adopting new technologies? And I think related to that is also this question when it comes to technology applications. Do these companies prefer in-house off the shelf, plug and play? What do you see going on there? Your thoughts?
Yeah, first on some of the challenges, I mean, job security is one. I mean, people in our industry need to understand that, the tools are there to help them grow, not replace them or their knowledge. And part of that is we need management to be the sponsors to really help promote people and growth and get people to, empowered to want to grow rather than build, proprietary kingdoms that they run. And looking at in-house versus, make or buy type applications, it really depends on how much funding agencies have to be autonomous and how much they have for staffing that can actually build and maintain these systems. I've always told clients, hey, you can build it, you can have a consultant build it, or you can buy it. Regardless of what you do, you need to make sure, number one, it's documented. And number two is you've got to make sure you've got somebody in the background that can maintain it. I've seen, and we're replacing systems today where, they're obsolete because the guy that designed it and wrote it, he retired, and it's, it's an old PHP application. It's not documented. And oh, by the way, it only runs on 3 operating systems ago. That's not the world you want to live in. You want to live in a world where things grow. And the way technology is evolving now, what used to be a 10-year technology is now a 1-year technology or less. So that's another thing you look at make-buy decisions is, how portable do you need your end products to be? And can you survive those obsolescence cycles? Or do you need something that can flow with technology and have a growth path towards the future? So, that's one of the things is, are you buying a product for the next year, or are you buying something that you want to last a lifetime, or at least have a lifetime growth path?
Yep. Great points. Johnny, anything?
Yeah, so when it comes to adoption of anything, right, that's always like, it's the maturity of your program. So if you took asset management, right, the more that your asset management program matures, then the more your technology should mature, right? You should go from, siloed systems and data into more consolidated, integrated, and then, but, so I think those two go hand in hand. So to me, it's the maturity of the asset management program can be a challenge, right, in the industry, and we're all reactive. We because we don't have a lot of resources, because our assets are 3 generations old, we're fighting to save them, to keep them running, and when we do that, how much time do we have to concentrate on adopting new technologies, right? So it's somehow I know management can say, hey, we need to do it, but if the people don't have the time to put the stuff, learn it, train it, and get it in, so that's why, organizations like, I work for, and like Dave works for, and we exist to help with that adoption. And the other thing is when it comes to in-house versus developing, I mean, I'm not a developer, so there's, I could, if I needed something, I'll go to the App Store and get it, because for me to develop it, it'll take me, 3 years, right? So time to, sometimes that is also an issue with adoption. I might want to develop something for my end user to be, that basically works the way we work, but then how long does it take us? And how much do we invest into that versus going out there and finding something and someone that's already done it, built it, and can bring it into your organization much faster. So,
I think we have time for just one more question. And to all the other folks that have popped in questions, we will respond to you going forward. We've had a few come in on LinkedIn and elsewhere. So this is the last one that we'll take. How do you view this question of best of breed versus a single enterprise system? So I've got my obvious bias on this, so I'd like one of you gentlemen to respond to this.
I mean, when I look at enterprise applications, there's very few that are good at everything. They all started in one aspect. Maybe they've acquired or grown organically, many of the other functions you need. But the bottom line is you need to do what's best for your business, and you also need to look at it long term. The other aspect is you want tools that are modular and are easy to integrate with. I mean, especially with AI, augmented reality, and everything else we've got migrating for technology in this industry, you want to be able to take advantage of new things as they come along to be able to apply them into your business. So you want to make sure wherever you're at, you're not in a tool that's so rigid that you can't adopt and improve and make yourself more effective or efficient.
My background was for one best of breed system that in my career started my career, and then you know, and I would say at that time I was biased, and I would say, oh, there's no other better system than that, and there's a couple other ones out there. We can't mention names here, but recently, the big players, the top two big players, ERP, they made some, especially the one big one, has made some significant strides when it comes to bring in, you know, if you're going to do enterprise asset management, I mean, they're changing the game, and it's become, I believe it's going to be better than these best of breed, and the best of breed, hopefully they're paying attention, because, you know, they'll be left behind just like these big ones were left behind, right? And so to me, you know, I used to be biased. Now I'm like, I see a lot of changes, but also in the role that I am, you know, we focus on those large ones. So I kind of have to.
Understood. You know, look, I'll say this. I know I said I have an obvious bias, but let me just say this at a minimum, and it probably satisfies everyone out here and everyone out there. At a minimum, you know, you as a customer deserve choice. I mean, you don't want to walk into the only restaurant in town and assume that's the best food you're ever going to get. I mean, I think that it finally comes down to that, you know, it's got to work for the business, for the users, and whatever works. I mean, there's no one single rigid rule that we can talk through. So that sort of the time we have today, I know we went a little over, but this was fun. I enjoyed the conversation with you gentlemen. And to all the participants, thank you for your time and participation today. And for everyone watching, we will send you a recording of the webinar via email, as well as will be hosted on youtube.com/Connect, our channel, and certainly follow us on LinkedIn and subscribe to our newsletter. But with that, I really want to thank you, Dave and Johnny. I truly appreciate it. And if you don't talk before then, have a wonderful holidays and a very happy new year.